Seneca opens one of his letters on friendship with a piece of advice that sounds almost harsh at first. Judge a person thoroughly before you decide to trust them, and only once you've actually made that judgment, trust them completely, without holding anything back. Most people, he observed, do exactly the opposite. They extend trust immediately, out of politeness or convenience or simple hope that a new acquaintance will turn out well, and only start actually evaluating whether the person deserves that trust after something has already gone wrong. This wasn't cynicism about people in general. Seneca wasn't arguing that most people are untrustworthy. He was making a more specific point about sequence, that trust, to mean anything at all, has to be the result of genuine evaluation, not simply the default setting you apply to everyone until proven otherwise. Trusting too quickly, in his view, cheapens trust itself. If you extend the same complete confidence to a total stranger that you extend to someone who has proven themselves over years, the word trust stops meaning very much at all. He was writing this, worth remembering, from deep inside Roman elite society, where political alliances shifted constantly, and yesterday's ally could easily become tomorrow's danger. Seneca drew a sharp distinction between two very different kinds of relationships that get casually lumped together under the single word friendship. On one side sit relationships built on mutual usefulness, people who are pleasant to be around because of what they can offer you, or because being associated with them benefits your reputation or your position. On the other side sit relationships built on genuine care for the other person's well-being, independent of what they can do for you. This distinction matters more than it might first appear, because the two kinds of relationships behave completely differently under pressure. A friendship built on usefulness tends to dissolve the moment the usefulness disappears, when you lose your position, your wealth, your influence, or simply stop being convenient to know. A friendship built on genuine care tends to hold, precisely because it was never actually dependent on external things in the first place. Seneca argued that most people, if they're honest with themselves, will find that a large portion of what they've been calling friendship over the years actually falls into the first category, and that this realization, while uncomfortable, is genuinely useful to have. He didn't think this was necessarily anyone's fault or a reason for despair about human relationships broadly. Useful relationships have their place, and not every acquaintance needs to rise to the level of deep friendship to have value. His point was narrower and more precise. Know the difference. Don't mistake a useful acquaintance for a real friend, because you'll eventually be disappointed when that relationship behaves exactly like what it actually was, rather than what you'd mistakenly labeled it. There's a specific test Seneca proposed for telling the two apart, and it's worth spelling out because it's genuinely usable today. Real friendship, in Seneca's framework, is defined less by how someone treats you when things are going well, and more by whether they remain present when there's genuinely nothing left for them to gain from staying. This connects to something else Seneca wrote about elsewhere, his argument that a true friend should be someone you could share your deepest worries with, including the parts of yourself you'd normally keep hidden from people whose good opinion you were still trying to earn. He suggested that if you find yourself constantly performing or curating what someone sees of you, that's itself a sign the relationship hasn't reached genuine friendship yet, regardless of how long you've known each other or how pleasant the relationship generally feels. The point of his careful evaluation process wasn't to trust fewer people out of general suspicion. It was to trust the right people completely, rather than distributing shallow, partial trust across a wide circle of people who hadn't actually earned it, and calling the whole arrangement friendship simply because it was comfortable to think of it that way. There's a genuinely freeing element to this idea once you actually sit with it. Most people carry a quiet anxiety about their social circle, a sense that they should have more friends, a bigger network, more people who'd show up for them if something went wrong. Seneca's framework suggests this anxiety is often based on the category error. It's not that you need more people in your life, it's that you likely already know, if you're honest, which of your existing relationships would actually hold under real pressure. And that number is probably smaller and more manageable than the anxiety suggests. What he was arguing is that conflating all of them with real friendship sets you up for a specific kind of disappointment, expecting depth from relationships that were never built for depth in the first place, and then feeling betrayed when they behave exactly as their actual nature always suggested they would. Know which category a relationship falls into, he'd argue, and you'll stop being surprised by how it behaves when it's actually tested. Seneca also addressed a question that tends to follow naturally from all of this. If real friendship requires this much careful evaluation, how many real friends can a person actually expect to have? He suggested that a small handful of genuine friendships was not only realistic, but sufficient, that the goal was never to maximize the number of people who cared about you, but to know clearly which few relationships in your life could actually bear real weight. This runs directly against a lot of modern social pressure, where a large circle of friends and a full social calendar are often treated as signs of a well-lived life, and where having few friends can feel like a quiet admission of failure. Seneca's framework suggests the opposite measure entirely, not how many people call you a friend, but how many people would still be there if calling you a friend stopped being easy or convenient. By that standard, a person with 3 or 4 genuinely reliable relationships is considerably better off than someone with 200 contacts who would all quietly disappear the moment those contacts stopped being useful or pleasant to maintain. It's a smaller number to aim for, but Seneca clearly considered it a far more honest one. And probably, if you actually sit down and count, closer to the real number most people already have, whether or not they've admitted it to themselves yet. Seneca's own life offers a real example of what this kind of friendship actually looked like in practice rather than just theory. Much of what we know of his mature philosophy comes from his letters to Lucilius, a Roman official considerably younger than Seneca, to whom he wrote over 100 detailed letters covering everything from grief to wealth to the fear of death. What's notable about the correspondence isn't just its length, but its honesty. Seneca discusses his own struggles and doubts with Lucilius rather than only offering polished wisdom from a position of assumed authority, which is exactly the kind of unguarded vulnerability he elsewhere identified as a marker of genuine friendship rather than a merely useful acquaintance. Whether Lucilius was a real singular correspondent or partly a literary device Seneca used to organize his own thinking is something historians still debate, since so little of Lucilius's own writing survives to confirm the relationship from his side. But the letters themselves model exactly the standard Seneca set elsewhere. Sustained attention to another person's growth and well-being over years, honest enough to include his own uncertainties, and entirely unconcerned with whether the correspondence made Seneca look consistently wise. It's a genuinely different kind of writing than a polished philosophical treatise intended for a wide audience, and that difference is itself the point. A real friendship, by Seneca's own definition, is conducted differently than a performance for strangers. And the letters to Lucilius, whatever their exact origin, read like exactly that kind of private, ongoing conversation rather than a lecture delivered at a safe distance. Subscribe for the next episode. We'll cover Epictetus's take on freedom, from the one Stoic who understood the difference between legal freedom and the freedom that actually matters better than almost anyone else in history.